All right, welcome everyone. This role play demonstrates all the key elements of a tab board meeting. It applies equally well, both to in-person as well as virtual meetings. So several parts of the role play are things that would apply to the first meeting of a new board, specifically the welcome by the facilitator. We only get one opportunity to welcome a brand new board. So we really want to thank them and welcome them appropriately. The new member introduction. Yes, eventually as new members join an existing board, they'll do their introduction in their first meeting. But at the first meeting of a tab board, everyone introduces themselves. We're just going to demonstrate one of those introductions here today. Describing member topics and how we're meant to use our structured protocol for that. That's going to be more detailed, more prescriptive than we would in a typical board meeting. So those are things that we really focus on in a first board meeting. Other parts of this role play are more indicative of ongoing board meetings. So the member that gives their status update to the other members, that's only done after the first board meeting. The discussion of the members' topics, we're gonna discuss two topics. Of course, you know, we discuss topics in all board meetings, the first one and subsequent meetings, but you'll see that there's going to be some familiarity between the members, and so they already sort of have some background and that kind of thing from each other that they wouldn't have in a first board meeting. So we're doing a little bit of a hybrid here. The wrap up and the close are the same regardless of meeting. So to keep it a bit simpler and to concentrate on facilitation, we're not going to use the Tab Connect tool in the role play. So for actual board meetings, members should use Tab Connect in three ways. Number one, members enter their discussion topic in advance of the meeting. Number two, they enter their status update form, usually just before, like the day before the board meeting. And then at the end of the meeting, they'll enter their feedback on the board meeting into Tab Connect. In a board meeting using Tab Connect, the facilitator would often open the Tab Connect application, share a screen, whether it's in person or via Zoom, or print Connect reports. But we're not going to demonstrate that here. We'll keep it a little simpler. All right, and just keep a couple of things in mind. How much speaking does the facilitator do compared to the members? And it's a little bit more in a first board meeting. Does the facilitator ask clarifying questions or make suggestions during the topics? Are the members prepared? Are they engaged? Do the members leave with clear commitments? So that's about it. Let's go ahead and get started, and I'll hand it over to John, who's today's facilitator.
Thank you, Dave. Let me share my screen. So, well, welcome everybody. Thank you to your first board. I'm excited to have you here. I hope you're as excited as I am. I think the first board is always an interesting time because you guys probably had some preconceived notions of what you thought this was going to be. But I think when you go through this, you're going to see the true value of a board, and hopefully you'll be with us for a long time, and you'll be referring many of your business owner friends to us as well. So the agenda today, again, this is a first board meeting. By the way, all my agendas start with a little quote, which I thought this quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson was a good way to start our first board meeting. But let's the agenda. You know, this is different than the normal board meeting. I'm going to do a little more talking than normal. The general format today is we're going to do an introduction. There's a lot of housekeeping stuff that we have to do, which I'll take you through. We will do new member introductions, and Those are going to take up a big chunk of the time because this is really, the first board meeting is really the first chance for you guys to get to know each other really well. So we're going to take advantage of that. We'll have some time for a few topics, member topics, and then we'll end with your best takeaway. As we get started, I want to ask you guys a question. What makes a good board? You guys tell me. If you guys, shout out an answer. What do you think makes a good board? What about you, Electra?
Trust.
Trust, okay. Chris?
Yeah, trust, openness, and I guess willingness to share.
Yeah. Anybody else? Carol?
Being willing to be vulnerable.
Excellent. Great one. What about you, Dave?
Yeah, I'd say respect. Really respecting each other and our differences as well as our similarities.
I think those are fantastic. Fantastic way to describe a good board. I would add to that communication is really important. I asked everybody to put what your disc profile was up by your name, which is great. I know you guys are not disc experts yet, but you will be. Just remind everybody what everybody is. So keep that in mind as you're having your communications today. Another thing I would add to that is boards are self-governing. My role today is I'm facilitating the board. I'm going to make sure that we stay on track. I may ask some clarifying questions, but this is your board. This is not my board. So the more you're involved, the more you take ownership of it, the better the board's going to be. So I thank you in advance for that. During our, the board, this is the first board meeting. You mentioned trust and communication, and that is all going to get better the more you guys are together. The more you guys grow and trust each other, you'll become more vulnerable. And then the feedback you're getting is going to get better and better. So the value grows the longer the boards are together. During our first coaching session, we mentioned Tabanos, which was everybody has the things that put their guard up. We're not going to talk about that today. We will in future board meetings. But again, just think about everybody's disc profile and be a good communicator. The expectation is that you'll be held accountable and you will make commitments and keep those commitments. And that's why we're here. There may be times when somebody on the board needs to say something a little more bluntly to somebody else. And that's what we want to happen, that accountability. And that's why we're all here. We all know confidentiality is really important with TAB. Everybody has signed the NDA. Just so you know, any guest that comes to a meeting, whether it's a potential board member or an outside speaker, everybody has to sign an NDA or they can't come. So as you know at TAB, that's something really important and we cherish that. And I've already went to my role. Some housekeeping. You guys have, during our first in your welcome kits, and you've read the Good Member Chart. I just want to remind you of that. Some rules. We'll in our next session we'll actually sit down and determine what the rules are. But for today, let's make sure we arrive on time, be fully present. Make sure your technology, try to be. I know people are home during COVID, but try to not be distracted, and we'll deal with food. If somebody needs to eat or whatever, that's totally fine as long as it's not as long as you're quiet. Tip Scribe. I mentioned you all during coaching that TAB has a newsletter, Tips for the Top. Those tips come from these board meetings. So does somebody want to volunteer to be the tip scribe so that if any great words of wisdom happen, someone will make that down and we can send that in? Does anybody want to volunteer?
I'll be happy to do that. I'm the newbie, one of the
Great.
newbies.
Thank you, Carol. And then future board meeting dates. I set this meeting today, getting you guys, but going forward, you guys will be setting the meeting. So we'll do that at the end. But you guys, again, I will, as long as I don't have a conflict, it's whenever you guys decide you want to meet, whether that's morning, afternoon, evening, you guys will set it. If I can make it, assuming I'll be able to make it, we will. If not, we'll have to modify it. But know that I'm not setting the date, you guys are. So So the first thing we're gonna
What,
start with.
question,
Yes,
John?
yes, sure.
Yeah, so I get it. You covered Tabanos and the good member charter and all when we met. And I think that's really important. But what about the getting an urgent phone call if we have something going on in the business or family or something? How do we handle those things here?
Well, let me ask you guys, how do you guys want to handle if someone gets a text or, how do you guys want to handle it? You guys, what are your suggestions?
I just think if we, if we just, I don't know, make sure that we filter it and it really is genuinely important. And it's not every meeting. And I would even maybe we should try to let the group know, hey, I got something going on in the business. I'm probably going to get a call that I have to take today. So we know that ahead of time. And if that comes through, step out to take it, keep it as quick as you can and try not to be a distraction.
Is everybody okay with that?
I am.
Yes.
Yep. No, sounds good. Unless it's an emergency, and I guess that'd be the thing. If something comes up and then it's an emergency, excuse yourself and we'll catch you up when you get back.
Okay, great. Does anybody else have any other questions? Electra?
I do. Will we be sharing financial information about our companies?
Yeah, I would like kind of a top line financial update, every month. Is everybody okay with sharing that?
Yeah.
Sure.
Like revenue and
Yeah. I mean, it's whatever you want to share, but I mean, the more information the board knows about your business, the better they can give you feedback. So, top line revenue, gross profit, whatever you guys are comfortable with sharing, you can share as much or as little as you choose, but enough that your board can help you. So is everybody good with that?
I am.
think
Any other questions?
Yeah, just one other question, I guess, John. I know you asked us in our names here to put our disc profiles on here. What are we doing with that?
Well, we are, the disc is your disc profile is basically your communication style. It's the how and why you communicate the way you do. And everybody is different. We're going to be doing an exercise called Tabanos in a couple of meetings to really kind of work that through and everything else. But that's what it's for. And you'll be, in our coaching sessions, we'll be learning more and more about DISC to make you understand. The biggest point for everybody to understand is that everybody's profile is different. So if you're conflicting with somebody, know that they may have a different style that you. So hopefully it gets you to learn to adapt your style so you can be better communicate with me, better communicate with your fellow board members. So does that make sense?
Okay, thank you.
Excellent. So next on the agenda, we're going to do new member introductions. And Carol is the new member today. So Carol, I know you've had these questions in advance because I shared them with you in our coaching session, but if you would go down the list one by one and tell us all about Carol.
Sure, I'd be happy to. And first, I want to just say I'm very excited to be here, and I can't wait to learn from you all. So I'm really excited about being on this advisory board. So
Excellent.
my business, I'm Carol, and my business is that I am a co-founder of a company called CodeBox. And what CodeBox is, it's a subscription business where young children get to learn how to code. So our boxes, we try to keep them fun and definitely instructional. So how the business works is that parents will subscribe, and after the subscription, they receive a box monthly. And in these boxes are fun activities for the kids to do, and it also provides instruction on basic coding. So the kids get to go to a website, and then they're able to create and work on apps. So it's very educational and it's very technology based. And when it comes to kind of like describing our personal situation and our interests, I happen to be married and I have a 9-year-old daughter. I actually enjoy coding as a hobby. So yes, I'm rather geeky and technology based for sure. And in terms of other interest, I kind of have a traditional, non-traditional hobby for females, which is woodworking. Um, but I'm also completing a novel just because I like to challenge myself in many different directions.
By the way, if anybody has any questions, hold them and we'll save them till the end. Jot them down. I have a question right off the bat, so but we'll wait. Go ahead, Carol.
Okay, perfect. So how we got involved in the business is that my co-founder and I were both working at IBM. And we had been discussing starting a business for years, but didn't really know in which direction that we wanted to go. So I've been spending some time teaching my daughter how to code, and I got to thinking that that might be a good way to get children involved in technology. So we really kind of believe that coding not only is an important life skill for kids to have, at least, from many different facets as a potential career, or just to be able to understand how technology works. So because we feel that it's becoming so important to our young people and digitization in general, that we decided to converge this teaching our own kids how to code and move it into a business. Um, and so what's happening around our business today is that we are actually progressing fairly well. But when we started, we decided to try a crowdfunding campaign. And it actually worked very well for us. So we were able to raise some of the money, but also, and probably more importantly, we were able to raise awareness to what the product was and why we were so passionate about doing this. We shipped our first product over a year ago, and currently we have about 4,000 subscribers. So the top of the funnel is working pretty well, but we're seeing way too much churn, and we really want to decrease that and become a bit more stable in how we're operating our business. And the milestone where we're really going to celebrate is when we get to 10,000 subscribers. And we hope to eventually have the company at about the $10 million range in gross revenue. So we're going to launch other products as we come up with them or the suggestions are made that will complement what we're already doing. And we would also like to move our plan into the schools because that seems pretty much like a logical next step for us and the company. In terms of personal goals, my main personal goal is to be known as a founder of a successful educational technology company. And then outside of business, I just really don't want to work around the clock. So like a lot of young founders of companies, it seems that I'm working all the time in the business, and I want to find ways to spend more time with my daughter, which is why I started this business to begin with, and not spend all of my time working. My expectation for the board is that I've always loved being parts of teams at IBM, and I've also joined a peer group before throughout my career. And I really love the peer boards or any kind of board because people challenge each other, and I love to be challenged. I'm fairly good at holding myself accountable, but I seem to do much better when other people challenge me to do better. So I also am looking forward to learning from the group and to see how other people are running their companies and really get some great insight on how I could do better as well. What you all get for me, sometimes I think I'm not really sure that I know. I've worked in corporate America and I've started a business, but I'm a little concerned about, do I really know anything that I can share with you? Um, hopefully I can bring some good ideas to the table that has worked for me in the past and that you all can find useful. And I also like the idea of helping others. So hopefully, we will have a mutual relationship in that regard. And I'll use my background and my experience as much as possible to help make suggestions, because I do tend to, kind of, I'm a rule follower as it goes. So sometimes I forget that it's okay to also be a little innovative. So I'm very good at using past experience. So hopefully that will work most of the time. Some of the issues I would like to discuss with the tab board is basically, what am I not seeing? What is it that I'm missing? I'm sure I'm missing something, and I don't even know that I can describe what that something means. But what kinds of processes maybe should I be putting into place that are helpful from an operation standpoint or from a financial standpoint? And if you all would be free enough to share with me what hasn't worked for you, that would be very helpful too, because I would like to not make the same mistake that others have made. And I'll have some partner challenges as well that I'd like to discuss. My friend and I get along pretty well discussing this business, but we don't always see eye to eye. So knowing how to handle my partner would be very helpful. What I love about my business is that it's a mission-driven company. We truly believe in what we're doing because we believe that we're helping children. What do I like the least about my business? My bank account definitely is stressed. So that is definitely concerning. And it makes me really nervous. So I really need to figure out a way to feel comfortable with the ups and downs of the financials and of the business itself. And for the last question, what is my current thinking about my exit strategy? My co-founder and I talked about, we started this business so that we could become successful at it and then sell it and, receive a few fruits of our labor, as it were. So I'm hoping to build a fast-growing, profitable business, and then find a really good strategic partner. And we would like to do this within the next 5 years.
Fantastic. Thank you, Carol. Does anybody have any questions for Carol?
No, just I'm looking forward to our partner discussion, Carol. I know what you're saying there, so that'll be good.
Right. Words of wisdom, I'll take them.
Any other questions?
So let me just ask, you mentioned you're writing a novel. What's the topic? Is it a business? Is it fiction?
So it's fiction, but it's kind of like a sci-fi thriller, but with a business slant to it,
Oh, that's cool.
so.
How far are you along with the book?
Oh, I'm about 70% of the way through. I went ahead and found an editor, and they're editing part of the first part of the book. And I will tell you, it's driving me crazy, because the parts that I put together that I thought were fantastic are the parts they're tearing apart. This is a learning process, and sometimes it really hurts my feelings, but hopefully
gotta love those editors.
Oh well.
I'm going to make one comment. I knew about Carol's book, but that I was wondering if somebody would ask. In my experience with all my members, the new member question that gives people the biggest people have the issues with is what can the board expect from you? And Carol, you rattled off the successes you had in your business, and then you're shy about what you bring to the board. It's real, but it happens. Everybody has the same thing. So know that you're not alone in that feeling of, what am I going to bring? You bring a lot, and everybody can tell that by hearing your very impressive resume. So congratulations for that.
Well, thank you for that. But, hopefully I won't sound like too much of a goober as we move forward.
Excellent. So now we're going to go on to the member up to every board meeting. All the members give a 5-minute update. For the sake of this, we're not going to do everybody today. Well, Dave is going to give us his update. I am going to time. Everybody has 5 minutes, and I will time it. So take it away, Dave.
Yeah, Carol, I'm still trying to figure out what it is I bring to the board. So maybe you can help me with that over time. So personally, I'm an 8. I'm doing real well. I'll talk a little bit about why. My business outlook, a 5. Having a good year, great year, but I had a setback. It's been tough since the last meeting. So in terms of 3 wins since we last met, so I did, as the other folks know, I own a sailboat, a big one with several other partners on the East Coast. So it was just great. I was able to go there, sail down the coast. We found a new place to dock it in Florida. So that was fantastic. We got from our largest customer, as we discussed in the past, they represent a disproportional amount of business for us. But they've just given us the largest order that they've ever given us. So I am going to have to hire some folks. And then I hired, and I talked about this at the last meeting, I did hire the salesperson, and she'll start in 2 weeks. So in terms of emerging threats, my senior tech, the guy that runs my highest end machine to kind of make the circuit boards and all, he's in the hospital, and he's really sick, and I'm just not sure if he's going to return. And we were down for almost 2 days with that part of the business as we scrambled, and we got somebody in to help us a little bit, and we're up and running, and we're back in business. But that was a really big setback for us. In terms of opportunities, nothing much. We got that new big order in, so I see that as being the biggest opportunity to do a good job on that order. In terms of the freedom from my business, yeah, just having turning my phone off, being on the boat, not having to wear a mask around, just sailing, beautiful weather, friends, good food, good drinks. It was a great trip. So really enjoyed that, and we're planning the next trip down there. And then the commitment from the last meeting. So I talked about I have somebody who I really like. I think she's going to be dynamite to be the salesperson of the company. We've never had one. We've never had anybody in sales. We've just, Rich and I have just gone out and found the business. Problem was, at least where I was challenged, that she wanted a higher base salary than I was comfortable with. And as we discussed at the last meeting, I committed to counter proposing to her lesser base salary, higher commission on the projects that she brings in, and she agreed to it, and seemed pretty happy. She didn't seem disappointed or anything like that. So it was a good outcome, and thank you all again for the great feedback and discussion at the last meeting.
Excellent. Does anybody have any questions for Dave? We have about a minute left.
How's your employee doing now? Have they recovered? Sounds scary.
No, he's still in the hospital. It's pretty bad, and he just doesn't have the best, positive mindset and that kind of thing. So you put that on top of how he's doing physically, and unfortunately, it's not good at all.
I'm sorry to
Thanks,
hear that.
thanks for asking.
Dave, this is information that happened after our coaching session, so it was new to me as well. Are you thinking for the long term, like what happens if he doesn't come back? Have you started that process?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I just have a younger person in there. She's great so far. I mean, she may actually become better
Gotcha.
I think she has more potential than he does. But what I really learned is I can't just have one person in the building with
Correct.
one area of expertise. So I gotta work on her backup
Yep.
as well.
Well, that's it's unfortunate that the thing had to happen to your employee, but I think a lesson learned is a very good lesson learned for everybody, on the board. If someone is doing, if one thing and it's really important, you only have one person doing it, we got to work on fixing that. So that's something that definitely the board can definitely help with. So normally we'd have a break at some point. Now let's get on to the member discussion. Again, this is your first board. A little ground rules before we get started. I've shared with you in our coaching session, but we have a specific way of presenting our challenges as it is here. My topic is, it is significant because, the ideal outcome is, any action taken to date, relevant background info, and the help I want. You don't necessarily have to follow that order as long as you're hitting on all the points. Once a topic is presented, we'll do a round of clarifying questions. It's really hard, but please, when you're asking a question, try not to ask 2 questions in a row and try not to provide feedback with your question. If you do, I'm going to respectfully cut you off. Just know that. But please, it's hard. Try not to provide feedback because you want to ask a question, you want to say something back. And the person who's getting, you obviously can answer a question, but don't spend too much time kind of justifying it, whatever, take it in, etc. After questions are asked, we may do, depending on time, we may do a couple of rounds. Then we'll ask for inputs and suggestions. Again, I will be selecting everybody, and then we'll make a commitment. Rule of thumb, everybody will have 15 minutes today. So generally, you should be spending 2 minutes on presenting the topic. Then questions should be roughly, probably 8 minutes. So that's 10 minutes. And then the remaining time is spent on solutions and making a commitment. Know that there is 15 minutes. If you spend 10 minutes just presenting the topic, then there's only going to be 5 minutes left for questions and feedback. So, and I will respectfully cut you off at 15 minutes. We have to be respectful of everybody else's time. So being concise is important. So with that, Dave, Electra has a topic today. Let me get the calendar ready and we're ready to go.
Okay. All right. So the topic I want to talk about today is that I need to make a decision. I have to decide whether I'm going to promote one person in particular to be my second in command, or put 3 equal, lieutenants, for lack of a better word, in place, and they sort of head up each of their lines of business. I no longer want to have the business consume every sort of waking minute of my day every day. And so I really want to have more flexibility, and I would like to be able to work less hours at the end of the day. And this is why this is all so very important to me. So if I had to say what my ideal outcome is, it's to put an org structure in place with the right people in the right roles, and allowing me the flexibility to step away. And that even means, might be weeks at a time in which I am not in the office, and I don't want to have to sort of worry about every detail, and needing to stay attached even when obligations, call me elsewhere. So let me tell you about the actions that I've done to date. I have spoken to the team about my desire to step back, take more time away, but I have not given any specific commitments to any individuals, nor have I announced any organizational structure changes. So let me give you a little bit of backup information around this. The most senior person that I have, who is really, if you look at the org, the way we function, the natural second in command, is a really excellent accountant, very, very good technical expertise, and performs wonderfully. However, they are not as good working with customers, nor are they as good working with other employees. So that presents a challenge. So the help I am looking for today is first, is it better in general? Is it better to have a single person as a second in command versus having 3 people act as sort of like a governing triumvirate? And second, how do you suggest I deal with my second in command, given the challenges she has dealing with people? So that's my
Excellent. Great. Thank you, Electra. Now we're going to go into rounds of questions. Does anybody have a question they want to volunteer to go first? Or if not, I'll pick somebody.
I can go first
ahead.
there, John.
Great, Chris. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, thanks, Electra. There's a lot there for sure. And I guess you kind of talked around the relevant background that your most senior person would be a natural second in command. Now, I guess my clarifying question, really what I know is while they're a good accountant and not good at working with customers, as you said, or with other employees, what's the most important thing for you there? Is it that your second in command is a good accountant, or that they're good with people, or do you need somebody that has it all?
Well, since we are an accounting firm, their expertise and breadth and depth of experience is very important. They have to be able to represent the whole business, and this second in command does have that. However, and as you likely all know, as business owners, you are the face of the business, you are the face with the client. And so it's very important. I want it all. To say it simply, I want someone who can be as successful talking with clients, and in running a business, you need to be able to motivate and keep everyone to task, so that the whole firm's running well. So I am looking for a complete package. Ideally, it would be great if it was one person.
Carol, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. So your second in command,
Mhm.
is this a person who would be open to training to learn how to deal with people?
We've talked about it in the past. So she has awareness that this is not a particular strength. And so I do think there is openness there to build skills and to try different things. So I do think there's room there to grow.
Dave?
So I know we've talked about this at different times, and you've gone back and forth and that kind of thing. So tell us about as it stands right now, your exit plan. Do you plan to, what kind of time frame are you thinking of, and are you looking to sell the business to whatever level of management you put in place to at that next level?
So while I am certainly looking to take a step back, I don't foresee my exit from the business happening any earlier than 5 to 7 years out. However, I want to use the time really effectively. To perhaps, if there is someone in the organization that I would love, if even from a continuity standpoint, to be able to have that sort of transition happen. But otherwise, I might look for a strategic buyer.
Any other questions? Chris?
Sure, I got just one more, and I know what you really were asking for is, you know, is it better to have one person or three people at the top, you know, and we've focused on your second in command a bit here. I think the first question being asked, once you get an answer, will determine who and how you're going to deal with your second in command. So I guess, you know, in light of that, Electra, how would you, like, what's your gut telling you about leadership in your company?
I believe that there's development that needs to happen, that the way I have um, run this company, that there hasn't been enough opportunity for the folks who I would love to tap to really show themselves in a big way and really increase my confidence that they are able to step forward. So think some of this I have to look in the mirror and look at some changes that I have to make too.
Because, you know, again, just sorry, John, just to clarify,
Okay.
I know I'm on question 2 now or 3, but you know, when you say look in the mirror, you know, I get that. I guess right now the way you're structured is you are the person in command,
Yes.
right? And so if you were to step away, having 3 other people kind of share the command, I guess that's, you know, you're all in a sense trying to replace yourself. And that's where I ask the gut question is do you want one person to replace you to take some of that, or would it be, again, with what is your gut telling me, would it be effective for 3 people and you delegate a bunch of stuff, right?
Mm. You know, I think my gut is leaning towards a single person. But I guess I'd like to explore the notion of maybe a partnership model with maybe a managing partner structure that I see that, you know, in other accounting firms. But we've always had a single uh, person. So that would denote kind of a significant change.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Carol?
Yeah, I would just ask, since you're talking about wanting to be away for weeks at a time, if there was some kind of dispute among the 3 people, how would you expect them to come up with a solution?
Yeah. And so one notion potentially is thinking about a managing partner so that there is a more senior sort of tiebreaker in that seat potentially. You know, my hope is that for these 3 lieutenants, that they would be able to think long and hard about what's best for the business and use that to inform their decision making. But it does require a tremendous amount of discipline and you know, more egoless approach. And so that's some of my hesitation. I think you're tapping on one of the reasons why I keep going back to a more single thing. I don't want a sort of analysis paralysis, can't make a decision thing happening.
Dave, you have a last question?
No, I don't think it's that important.
Okay. I have one question, then we'll go into feedback. Is there a written job description for the second in command?
Not currently.
Okay. So now let's go into feedback solutions for Electra. Does anybody want to start us off?
I'll go
Carol?
ahead.
Carol, go ahead.
I would suggest definitely if you're going to step away for weeks, regardless of how you do this, you need a very comprehensive job description that's going to lay out the job duties, but especially if you're going to have 3 lieutenants, as it were, everyone will need to know where their role is separate from everybody else's. It's going to have to be very delineated.
Dave.
And my suggestion is, first of all, I think you're getting ahead of yourself, because I think as Chris and I know from past meetings and everything, you've not been willing to let go. And I do think, you're thinking about an org structure. I think the first thing you need to think about is, are you really committed to let go, regardless if it's 1, it's 3, whatever you come up with. I think that's the most important part of it. Just back to your specific question, I would favor the 3-person model. You've talked about your second in command, de facto second in command now, right? She has some challenges with her bedside manner, and as you've said in the past, you're a service-oriented organization, right? It's the relationship with your customers and things like that. So she's good technical, but she does not bring that relational skill, and you do, and so you hand that off. That's gonna put I think put the business at risk. So I would look at the 3-person model.
Hey, Carol, did you have a preference on a one-person command or 3-person?
I'm a 2-person organization, and I'm having some challenges with my partner. So I'm not sure that I would lean towards the 3 lieutenants unless everybody is very aware of what their roles are.
Okay. Chris.
Yeah, I think ultimately, what I would do at least is that it's a bit more of a phased approach, in that once you, as Dave says, learn to let go of some of these things, and you are able to give people other activities to do that get some of that bad work that you don't like to do off your plate. Ultimately, I think there needs to be some level of accountability. In my experience, if there's no clarity around leadership and who to be accountable when you're not there, Electra, I think that would be a bigger challenge, and introduce other risks and challenges when you're away. So maybe there's a phase to get to that 1 person, and you've got 3 that you can kind of work with and understand that total package that you want. But eventually, I think your goal to get out of the business, you're going to need somebody to replace you, and that could be one of these 3 right now, right? And so again, long-winded, but I would say going to find 1 person, you need to be able to do that eventually.
Excellent. So Electra, what you heard the feedback from your board. What actions are you going to take before next month?
Yeah. So first of all, thank you. I appreciate your insights. The thing that really hit me hard is needing to take a bit of a step back and thinking about what it is exactly that I want to see happen. What's most critical to my business, and what's most critical in the person that I want to entrust this second in command role to. And that's my first, is to get clarity on that. So that's my next step.
So by next month's board meeting, what are you going to share with the board that you have decided that you are going to make the commitment to build help build the team, or just clarify that
outline? I think it's to start with an outline of what's most critical what's the most critical ingredients that I need to see there. So
right.
Think about everything that this job entails, and I view it as the start of a job description, but it's going to be a bit more high level than that, and really focus on what's most critical.
So I heard 2 things I heard you need to take a step back to figure out if you really want to, give up some of your responsibilities, and you're going to do an outline of a job description. Is it both of them? Is it one of them? I just want to make sure we're clear on what you want to do before next month.
Both have to happen. So it's
Great.
both.
Excellent. Excellent. Great. Now we're on to Chris. Let me reset the clock. And you are on the clock, Chris.
Yeah, no, on this, and thanks, Carol, because you alluded to at the beginning, one of my challenges is really my partner. And, you know, we've been lucky, the business has been okay. And what he's doing right now is he's working on a house. He's building his own house. It's taken a lot of time. And it's been noticeable that, you know, he's barely been involved in the business. And so there's been some challenges with that, right? You know, we really are, it's significant because we really are expecting him to be a leader in the field. We're seeing, you know, significantly more field issues because he hasn't been responsive, it hasn't been there since he's been working on his house, right? So ultimately what I want to see him do is get re-engaged, you know, certainly with the business, you know, that he's working, you know, more successfully and like he has in the past and showing that he could do as in that field supervisor role. I mean, he's a partner in the business, but his past is around field supervision, and it's been really great. So to date, I've spoken to him once directly. You know, he's given me his word, if you will, that he's going to be more dedicated, but he really hasn't, you know, shown that. You know, I discussed with the majority owner. So while he's not in, you know, my field supervisor isn't is part of ownership. He's not the majority owner, right? So I've discussed it with the majority owner, but you know, the majority owner, my boss in a sense, doesn't want to confront it, right? So he's really is leaving it to me. So this guy, while not a majority shareholder by any means, he is still a partner, you know, and is a founder of the company, right? But the company has bought most of his shares, so he really doesn't have significant ownership in it. He's highly emotional. He's a big personality. The field guys love him. They absolutely love him. Our customers like him for sure. But since he's been working on his house and that's where his focus has been, you know, I've really got to be cleaning up a lot of his problems that you know, he's created. So that's really the challenge. So what I'm looking to you guys is you know, is he still the right person to be the field supervisor? And if so, beyond him saying that he's going to do it, but he hasn't yet, how do I get him re-engaged in the business? And that's the question I'm asking this team. How do I re-engage him?
Excellent. Electra.
Can you give us a little bit more detail of the initial conversation that you did have in which you were, you know, saying that things weren't going well and that you know, there were issues?
Well, you know, as you guys know a little bit of my high I, high D, I'm, you know, you know, we became friends and we know that. And so some of that challenge is to be, you know, a little bit more confrontational. So, you know, I said, look, I'm hearing from the field. What do you think is going on? And, you know, so I don't know if I really got super to the point, but I did say, look, there is some challenges out in the field and it seems like there's more since your focus has shifted a bit and it feels like your focus has shifted a bit. So what do you think? And he said, yeah, you know, that's fair. And I will, you know, work to do better. And that was the gist of it. But, you know, that was a number of weeks ago now. And it really, we haven't felt that in the field that there's been anything better going on.
Thanks.
Carol. By the way, Electra, did that answer your question?
It did.
Great. Carol.
Are you sure it's just the building of his house that has made him disengaged, or is there problems among you partners that may be the reason for disengagement?
Well, that's a great question. You know, it was very much an assumption. It seemed like it all started at the same time. You know, his house, he was building his house, you know, he talked excitedly about being part of that project and doing it. And then, you know, within a few weeks of that, we've seen the field service issue start to get up. So, but it's a good point. It was an assumption really that I made, Carol, that was the cause of it.
Dave.
Yeah, so as you talked about in the past, you know, he's inarguably the most important position in the company. You know, he's the field supervisor. He goes from site to site. He looks at safety issues, how everyone's doing. He's a QA person. He's a visible customer person, right? Really important person. And, you know, sometimes he, as you said, he's a help, and sometimes he causes problems that you have to clean up. It sounded like if he was doing his job, you'd be pretty happy with him. Is there, so if he wasn't the solution, if you just decided to go elsewhere, is there somebody in the company or somebody you have in mind? I mean, how would you find somebody that could step into a very important role for you?
Yeah, that's another good question, Dave, because I really only started thinking about it because there was never a thought of him at you know, necessarily leaving. While we have some level of succession planning, it would, I haven't talked to him about his succession plan because was doing a great job in here. So it really never came up. But I certainly had to think about this more about, you know, what that ultimatum, but you know, is. We don't really owe much anymore. He doesn't have any shares, but he still culturally important to the business. And again, you know, was effective at his job. So there's a few individuals that I start to think about immediately that might, you know, that have been working with him in the field, but I haven't really done a lot of thinking or planning on, well, how would I replace him, you know? And that's another good point.
Any other questions? Electra? No?
I'm good.
How about you, Carol?
I'm just wondering if you did replace him, what do you think his response would be?
Well, I guess it would depend on the matter that in the way that I replaced him, right? If it's outright, you know, let him go, or if there was something else that we could do to, you know, understand some better planning around succession and what that means, right? Like I said, this has been fairly in the short term. His history has been, you know, for the most part, exemplary, right? The customers, like I said, like him. The field folks like him until the last couple months. So I'm not sure, Carol.
Dave, you have another question?
No, I don't think so. I think I have enough
Okay.
background from previous discussions.
I have a question. Chris, you're talking about how to get him re-engaged. Does he want to be more engaged in the business?
Well, that would probably be the first question I would be asking him, right? You know, as you guys are talking, asking these questions, honestly, it really is giving me some thoughts of what that conversation could start to look like. You know, I can see, you know, if I'm really being honest with myself on the initial conversation, as you asked, Electra, that, you know, there's probably a little bit more there, some, if you will, some partnership, managerial courage that needs to come out. So yeah, I'm thinking about that now, John.
And then I have one more follow-up question, then we'll go to feedback. Is there any other role in the company you could see him filling if he wasn't doing his current job?
Potentially. I mean, he worked himself into that supervisor role, and I think, yeah, there's potential of what he could do. I think it goes back to initial conversation. What does he really want to do?
Yep. Okay.
You know, but yeah.
Great. So now feedback, solutions for Chris, who wants to kick us off. Go ahead, Electra.
So, based on what I heard, especially since you've described, historically, this person has largely done a very good job in this role for your company. I do think having a conversation like you were alluding to of a different nature is in line, and to be prepared with specifics of issues that are arising and the impact they're having. And as one of the outcomes I'd seek from that conversation is ownership of this individual to be specific in what they're going to do differently, to really get something, seriously on a different track.
Great. Carol.
So if I understood correctly, it sounds like all of the owners are not on the same page. And it's almost surprising that the company is still doing so well. So I'm going to take the idea from my favorite rock band, Metallica. They went to group therapy. So maybe you need like a team counselor or something so that all of you are communicating better.
Okay.
Dave.
Thanks, Carol.
Yeah, and I would build off of that a little bit. My thoughts were going kind of in the same direction. The majority owners put you in a terrible position. It really has. And you got your main employee whose your success is dependent on his work has disappeared and checked out. I get it. He's one of the co-founders, but they either have to, they have to do their job, part of the role as well. And the majority owner won't do anything about it. So, and I know you just, you're more involved in the business and everything than he is. So, but these are the things that the founders need to deal with, especially with the co-founder. So I would just try to do whatever you can to get that delegated back up, if you will. At a minimum, you and the majority owner would meet with this person together, so it's not just something you have to do yourself, and that you agree ahead of time what that's going to sound like, what position you're going to take, and what does an acceptable outcome look like in that conversation.
Great.
Yeah.
So Chris, what based on feedback that you heard, what resonates? What are you going to commit to doing before next month?
Well, there's two things, I guess, that I absolutely will commit to you guys. That is, the first is I do have to have a conversation with the majority owner, that is currently the majority owner, and maybe, well, what I will be doing is presenting the facts of the impact that my field supervisor's lack of engagement has caused, and so there's some work to be done around digging out some facts and things like that. While my majority owner of the business says I don't want to deal with him, yeah, I've got to figure out then what exactly he's willing to deal with, and I'm okay to take that on for sure, because I think the follow-up and knowing my majority owner, I'm still going to have that conversation with my field supervisor, but I need his backing that if that goes back around and my field supervisor goes to the majority owner, he can at least say, well, yeah, Chris is right. And so really prepare him for that, right? So the way I see this going out, first commitment is absolutely having that conversation with the majority owner. I know I'm going to have the second conversation with my field supervisor.
Yeah.
And that will be to, like I said, he's a big personality, he's highly emotional. And so I need to try and take some of the emotion out of that by having, being prepared with some of those facts, right, of what it's doing. And the other side of that is really, and you guys brought up some good points of understanding what he really wants to do. you know, I think you maybe alluded to that, Carol, that he might have checked out for, it might be just coincidence, and there might be, his checking out could be, you know, precursor to something else. And so, you know, having some of that, I guess, managerial courage to have that conversation. And so, you know, the commitment to prepare for that and then have that conversation is really what I will report on to you guys next month.
Can you commit to dates right now for each one of those meetings, or do you not know that yet based on your calendar?
Well, I'll tell you what, the first conversation will happen with my majority owner next week. We do have
Great.
our weekly meeting, and that will be
Great.
one topic I bring.
Right.
And then shortly following that, you know, within the next 2 weeks, I will have that conversation with with my field supervisor.
Excellent. Great.
Thanks, everyone.
So I hope, for your first board, I hope you saw the power of a really good peer advisory board. I thought it was, this is a new board, but I thought there was some fairly candid comments, which again, that's why we're here, to hold each other accountable and challenge us. So I'm glad that I saw that. And I think as you guys get to know each other even more, it's going to get, feedback's going to be even better. So thank you for that. So now we're wrapping up. As you know from our first coaching session, it is a very common tab practice to ask what your best takeaway is. So we do it after every coaching session, and we're going to do it after every board meeting. So I'll start with Dave. Dave, what was your most valuable takeaway today?
It's funny, as people bring up their topics, you start thinking about, well, I don't have that, or I didn't do that, or I got to work on that. So it got me thinking, and both the topics here, we need good job descriptions for our key roles.
Yep.
And I think I have them somewhere. I'm sure we put them together at one point. We'll dust them off a little bit when we go to hire somebody, but what I'm going to do is go back and put that on the priority list to start making sure for all of our key positions we have a good job description.
Great. That's a great point, Dave. I may have said this to you all when we were talking about membership, but most members get as much, if not more, insight from helping to solve somebody else's problem than getting their own problem solved. So I think we just saw a great example of that. Carol.
So I think I kind of need to take my own advice and say that I need to do a better job of having those conversations with my own partner and stop making assumptions. Assumptions aren't facts, and assumptions aren't necessarily what the other person is thinking. So I need to do a better job of communicating with my partner, and maybe will kind of iron out some of our differences.
Excellent. Electra.
Well, I have a big appreciation of the diversity of thinking around the table. And even when I think I have thought something through from different angles, you're asking me a question that I hadn't thought about. So that's my big takeaway is just the value of having diverse minds looking at something with me, and just how valuable that is.
Excellent. Chris.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the biggest one for me is really that, look, I know, I assume that I'm not alone in the role that I have, but it's nice to feel, with this group that I'm not. And I guess that reinforced some of what we're doing, and the the idea around TAB for me is that takeaway to know that I'm not alone. And Carol, you're going through something similar, if nothing else, around, having some conversations with partners, right? So, that I guess helps that little courage bug go on going, Carol can do it, I can do it. And I'm hoping that, when I feed back that you'll take some of that away as well. So, but that was a big takeaway for me.
Excellent. Just so you guys know, I capture all of your takeaways. I'll add them to the agenda every month. So you'll see a running tally of all your everybody's takeaways from all the meeting. So know that's there. It helps remind us of what we talked about before. Before we get into the final thing, you guys need to schedule your next board meeting. So when do you guys want to meet next? Generally the second or third week of the month, but when do you guys, why don't we start there? What week of the month do you guys want to meet?
The second.
I was gonna suggest the second and then even suggest Thursdays mornings.
How does everybody think about the, I'm gonna make it up. It's the 12th. It's the 12th. In what morning? What time is everybody, by the way, is everybody good with the second week of the month?
Yep.
Thursday, yeah.
Okay, and Thursday's good. And
Yep.
time wise, are we 9 to 1? Are we 10 to 2? Are we 8 to 12? What is everybody thinking?
7 to 11.
7 to 11? I mean, it's you guys.
12.
That time is open for me. So whenever you guys want to, I'm there whenever you guys agree on a time.
8 to 12?
8 to
Yeah,
12.
8 to 12 is good
Okay.
for me.
Okay.
Okay.
Are
I'll
we good
make
with
it
8 to
8 to
12?
12.
Great.
Thanks, Carol.
So what I will do is I will send a meeting invite for the second Thursday of every month from 8 to 12. So they'll be in your calendar. So you don't have to worry about that going forward. So excellent. And again, this is something we can always revisit at some point down the road if something happens, but let's do that for now. I'm glad we came to a solution so quickly. And last thing is two bits of homework for you guys. If you go into the Tab Connect in the BBB and in the board meeting update form, if you would add in any feedback in your commitment that you received today on your topic, and also go into Tab Connect, and if you would do an evaluation of the board meeting today. It's really important that I get your feedback on all the board meetings just to see where things are. Again, these are your board meetings, so I want to make sure that you're getting the value out of what you should be out of Tab. So that's super important. So thank you for that. Does anybody have any questions before we part ways today?
No, thank you. Thanks all.
Great meeting.
Thanks, everyone. I really do. I'm really excited to be a part of this. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, I'm honored to have you as part of the Tab community, and you put your trust in me to help you along this journey, and excited of where this board is going to go. And I think you guys did a fantastic job today. So thank you for that. See you all next month.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, John. See you, everyone.